Have you ever wondered what it would be like to generate a semi-passive income from a business that you love and bought with little to none of your own money? How would it feel if you could finally buy that restaurant, salon, or any business for that matter without having to worry about where you were going to get the money from? Think of the lifestyle that would provide for you, your family, and even your retirement. These are the results that my good friend Ed Keels provides at his company, Beyond Breakeven. He provides world-class coaching on how to structure leverage buyouts for any business so that you can buy it without putting your own personal credit or net worth at risk. He's bought and sold over 25 companies personally over the course of his career and structured many more deals on the behalf of clients. And now he wants to help you learn over 100 ways to buy a business with none of your own money. And he also wants to teach you how to earn a six-figure income helping others do that exact same thing. So if you're ambitious and interested in buying a business with none of your own money, visit profitarchitects.com and give that number on the page a call or fill out the request info form and they'll get back to you. Make sure you mention referral code MEMS for a special offer. Now, back to the episode.
Welcome back to Abundant Culture Podcast,
where we dissect the mindsets and tactics of the true beasts of business.
People like Gary Vee, Grant Cardone, and Warren Buffett.
All to create a blueprint to experience life more abundantly.
Hey everybody, Joe here. Welcome back to the Abundant Culture Podcast. We're so glad to have you back again this week because we're talking about a subject that is very near and dear to our hearts. We believe that in America, business ownership is one of the most battle-tested ways in order to build wealth in America. But the problem is that 90% of all startup companies fail within about the first 5 years. And the other problem is that you might not necessarily like the volatility of the stock and bond market. So what other way can you get the perks of business ownership without investing in stocks and bonds and without taking on the risk of starting a very new company? We found out a way. You can just buy an existing company. And I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking that, oh, that costs so much money. I don't have the money for that. I don't have the time and all that stuff. And I hear you. But today's guest is going to teach us how to structure what's called leverage buyouts to where it probably won't cost you anything to buy the business of your dreams and start generating a semi-passive income and running the business that you love. So sit back, relax, and listen to and learn from our good friend, Ed Keels.
So hi, Ed, and thank you again for coming on to the Abundant Culture Podcast. We are really excited to have you today because Joe, he learned so much about what you do, a couple of weeks ago. And I know you guys have been talking a lot and you've been super, super valuable. So before we get into all the business side of things and, what exactly you do and how you help people, can you give us the backstory? How did you get into business?
65 years old. So that's a long story. We're trying to shorten it up. Just a serial entrepreneur. When you hear people say that, when it started snowing when I was 8 years old and all my friends had grabbed their sleds, I grabbed a snow shovel and went and made some money. And then I joined them. And it's kind of been a repetitive theme throughout my life. In fact, my son has nicknamed me the king of delayed gratification. So, I'll work really, really hard, give up a whole lot if there's a prize at the end that's worth that. So, I'm self-employed at age 11, truly younger, but in a real business. I lived in Camden, New Jersey, and went into business with my cousin. We would buy Italian ice from a local manufacturer who'd drop it off at our front door, and we'd drag it up to a divided boulevard and grassy median, and we'd set up there and we'd sell Italian ice all day long. And I look back on that, some 55 years later, and I was making enough money to pay for the cost of tuition at Harvard. Not that I went to Harvard at age 11, but I could have paid the way.
Wow.
I was making a grown man's wage. Since then, I owned my first restaurant and bar that I opened up when I was 20 years old, back in the day when the drinking age was 18. I've owned a men's clothing store, real estate investment firm, insurance and investments, a company that used to train bankers on their own products and services and how best to sell them, a company that specialized in loss prevention by doing inventory for restaurants and bars that don't know how to do inventory, don't like doing it. So I've owned about 25, 26 different businesses in my life. One real standout for me, life changer, was I started a lumber distribution company where I would buy from sawmills and I'd sell to Lowe's, Wicks, West, Home Depot, those kind of guys.
Yeah.
I've had very, very, very few jobs in my life. Fired from, I think, every one of them. For good reason. I don't play well with others, apparently. But I did a really good job for this company and took their sales from under $1 million a year to over $5 million. And that's where I learned the lumber business. And my boss came to me one day and said, if I didn't get my numbers up, they were going to have to make a change. And I went, how can I do any better than 5 times your sales in a 30-year history of the company? And so I said, I'll just start my own company and compete against you. And I took $10 million of sales away from him and other companies first year. But a banker lied to me, surprise, surprise, about funding. I told him, I said, I'm about to open this company. In 4 months from now, I'm gonna run out of money because I'm going to sell so much. I won't have the lines of credit to be able to buy from the sawmills because I'm a new guy and sell. And will you do this financing? And he said, oh, yeah, sure. 4 months later to the day, I did what I said I was going to do. I set up the company, millions of dollars in sales. And he said, no, we can't do that financing. I finally found it. But by that time, I dug a hole so deep I couldn't dig out. And so I lost that business. I lost a 4,800 square foot home, a pool, a tennis court, 2 cars repossessed, lost a wife of 23 years. And life was tough. It was tough. And a friend of mine at that time handed me a list of the top 10 things that would cause a person to be depressed or suicidal. And I just laughed. It was uncontrollable. And they said, Ed, I'm serious. We're worried about you. Why are you laughing? And I said, you're telling me any one of these things would kill a person. I got 7 of them. I said, maybe I'm too stupid to know, but I should be dead, right? Maybe I'm a perfectionist. I need to get the other 3. I don't know.
Right.
But I realized at that time the degree of the pain I was feeling and problems I was having to deal with were a function of really, really bad advice from attorneys and CPAs and people that you're supposed to trust and that know what they're doing. And that's when I really learned that they do not know business. They just don't. And that's a hard pill to swallow when I paid a lot of money. But they gave me bad advice, and I was in a lot of trouble because of it. I still would have had to go through some hard times, but nowhere near what I went through. And it was at that moment I said, no one should have to go through what I just went through. Nobody. Because it fragments families. It causes financial pressure, number one reason for divorce. And, so I founded my company Beyond Breakeven 18 years ago because of that experience. Yeah. So today I help people to buy businesses with little to none of their own money using the right structure, the right protections, and to go in with eyes wide open and a plan for how they're actually going to be profitable. It's not a faith thing. You got to have faith, but it's not blind faith.
Yeah,
For sure. And that's something that is extremely interesting to both me and Jasmine, and even some of the people listening to this podcast. I feel like a lot of people don't realize that they can, instead of starting their own company, they can actually buy one and then just really scale that company. And I feel like it's something that's just totally underrated. But you mentioned that there was about 106 ways to structure these type of buyouts. How did you get all that knowledge to use? Was it purely experience, or
yes,
you have
purely experience? I went to business school, majored in psychology, and president of the Honor Society. And 3.5 years in, I said, "Oh my God, what am I going to do with a psychology degree?" I don't want to counsel really sick people. And I couldn't detach. I cared too much. And I knew the abuse of alcohol and drugs rate among therapists that couldn't detach. Didn't want to go there. Wanted any money in teaching. So I beefed up the business hours and I to do double major. I didn't learn much of anything about business in business school.
Really?
And I think that's pretty typical. I've heard any number of people say, especially people with master's degrees, have commented, I learned more about business in a few hours with Ed Keels than I learned in my entire MBA that I spent $20,000 on just for the MBA program. So there's this lack of education in the marketplace. I went out there and got bloodied. I mean, I've owned a lot of businesses and I've helped hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of people get into business. And it's just in going out there and getting beat up that in making mistakes that I found things that work. And I literally stopped counting at 106 ways a couple of years ago because every month, literally, we come up with a new resource, a new strategy. It's not always resources that provide you money. It's a way to do a deal.
Yeah.
And so if you can do the deal a different way that negates having to borrow as much money, that's even better than having a resource that'll lend you money.
Yeah.
You don't have to borrow it.
For sure. So, go ahead.
So what drove you to get into all these different businesses? Because it seems like you were kind of just in like a broad spectrum of any business.
I'd like to eat. I guess I'm an opportunist, and I also we're more than what our parents used to be, which was go to work for somebody and that's your career for your whole life. Many people have many different careers throughout their life. I'm one of those creatives, and I like doing different things. And if I get bored with it, I got to sell it and move on. And why not? Life is too short. Do what you enjoy.
For sure.
That makes sense?
Yes.
Definitely. So one of the questions I really wanted to touch on here is, why do so many businesses that are listed on the market actually fail to actually get sold? Like when I was going through the free training that you have on your website, if the banks don't.
If the bank says no.com.
Yeah, if the bank says no.com. Shameless plug there. When I was taking your training, it said that 90% of all businesses that are listed fail to sell. Why, in your experience, why is that the case?
There's several reasons, but the two that it boils down to are, well, maybe there's more than two important ones. The first is when a buyer is interested in a business, and they look at buying that business the way you buy real estate. And so they take a look they could tour the business, they could see the employees, they could see the inventory, the furniture, fixtures, equipment, lots of customers. They walk outside and go, they must be making a fortune. I love this place. You're in love with the eye candy, just like you would tour a home. And the brokers try and function the same way. You go, do you love it? You go, yeah. Then we need to write up an offer and get it off the market. And that's what people do in business as well. See, our brains work like this. And have I ever seen anything like this before? Just in general in life, we try to associate what we're seeing with our knowledge, our base of knowledge. So, yeah, of course, I've seen stuff like this before. In the business sale, it's a big ticket item. There's going to be a big loan. There's a broker or brokers. There's buyers. There's sellers, just like real estate. But the processes of buying real estate and businesses are opposite each other diametrically. So when you use the wrong process, you get the results of a 10% success rate, not a 90. So the first reason is brokers try to sell businesses and sellers try to sell businesses using the wrong process, using the real estate process, which is opposite in every way. And I can go into that in a minute. But the second reason is, so the average person goes ahead and signs that contract. And the broker says, okay, I'll see you when you come back with your $300,000. They go, what? Yeah, well, you go get your money. Well, you're not going to help with that? No, I don't help with that. Okay. So now the buyer's got to figure out, am I going to be a sole proprietor, a partnership, an LLC, an S Corp, a C Corp, and what the heck is all that? And who's going to do that for me? And then once I do that, what do I have to do after that? And then I run to the bank, and the bank says, okay, well, here you need to fill out this application. Fill out the application. They say, okay, fine. So where's the 3 years worth of business tax returns and the 3 years worth of personal returns? Oh, okay. And then I got to dance around and go get that. And they bring it back, and then they say, well, where's your business plan? Business plan? We got to do a business plan? How do I do that? Yeah, you got to do a business plan. So another several weeks or a month go by. And then they bring it all back, and they say, well, where's your personal financial statement? What's that? And how do I fill that out? You'll have to go talk to a CPA or somebody. And it just goes on and on and on. And where is your money going to come from for down payment? Down payment? I need a down payment? Yeah. Well, we're going to take it out of our house. No, you can't do that. Sorry, you can't borrow your down payment. So there's all these decisions that have to be made, from doing a business plan to building a business, establishing an entity, to the buyout agreement, to the personal financial statements, and all of these documents, and then some. And you finally get them all together, and then it gets to underwriting, and somebody that understands numbers the way I do and teach my clients says, well, this doesn't work. Why are we looking at this? Should have known that in the first hour of looking at the financials of the business, not 3 months later after you've gotten all the elements together to give the bank a fair shot to look at it.
Yeah.
That's the number one reason, I think, is the process is wrong. It takes so long. The seller thinks this is like selling a house. I should have had a closing, a month or two ago. These people are lying to me. They're dancing me around. The second thing is, you need money to go to closing. So not only does the person have to try and figure out all that on their own, weave through the minefield and the quicksand and get all this stuff together, but then they have to find the money. And boy, there's a lot of shysters out there in the lending industry, and there's a lot of misrepresentation. And it's disheartening for people. They see these advertisements for business funding, but when they actually call, it's really a lead generation company that's generating leads that they sell to some lenders. Or it's a merchant advance company where you have to be in business and be in business for 3 to 6 months before they'll lend you money or advance you money on your current sales. That doesn't help me buy a business. So there's almost nothing out there in the way of financing. All the advertisements will lead to nothing when it comes to startup funding or business acquisition funding. Mm-hmm. So I think the process is wrong, and then you need money to go to closing, and brokers don't help with any of the stuff you have to do or the money that you have to get. Yeah. And the projects just die. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something that's completely insane. I remember when a few months back, I believe it was like last year, we were trying to buy these two hair salons. They were under the same brand, but it had two locations. And I remember thinking that the process was going to be a no-brainer because and this is, I mean, I had nobody else who did this type of stuff. So I was just looking at it and I'm like, oh, it looks good to me. I felt like from a cash flow standpoint, the price looked okay. And all of these different things. And I already had a kind of an idea of what I wanted to do with the business. They were really bad at social media marketing. And I just happened to know a social media marketing agency that I'm like friends with. And I'm like, I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to take it from 1.4 mil in revenue to
like 2.4. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And when I actually started the process, I was like, oh, this is going to be so easy. And then it got down to actually getting the loans, and it was like all of a sudden all hell broke loose. And it was like not only from the lender itself, but also from the broker. They
on the seller side.
They evaluated the company wrong, and that's something that I even found out just from talking with them, because what they were doing made no sense at all. And then when I got to the SBA loan, they were like, oh, you don't have years of experience. You don't have this, you don't have that. And I was like, and like I said, I had investors. I was like, well, what if I just put 50% down, like 50%? Would you at least finance the other half?
No.
And they said no. And I was like, 50%. This was the first ever time I was going to come up with 50% for anything.
And here's why that's a problem. And again, back to the process. Brokers tried to qualify the buyer.
Yeah.
Well, back to our opposite processes, right? Mm-hmm. In real estate, well, you as the buyer have to qualify. It's your income to debt ratio, your FICO score, and your down payment. Well, in business, it's got nothing to do with you. You're not writing the check every month. The business is expected to write the check. So even if you have 30 years experience, 50% to put down, great business acumen, you're all good. The business 99.999% of the time will kill the loan, because when a lender looks at the first page bottom line of the tax return of the business for the last 3 years, there's no money. The way we all do our business tax returns, the way we do our personal, is we write off everything we can. Business owners have a couple of additional tax deductions that most of us don't know about. The reason why you see politicians running around America going, every business owner I talk to wants tax breaks. Well, if that's true, why don't we see a 1 million man march on Washington?
Yeah.
Why? It's because business owners don't wait for those tax deductions. They make them themselves. And the favorite tax deduction is, I'm just not going to report all this income and nobody will be the wiser. And I can tell you from doing forensic accounting on thousands upon thousands of businesses over the last 25 years, literally thousands, I would do just every week, probably look at 10 businesses and 3 sets of tax returns. I'm looking at 30, 50 sets of tax returns and deals a week. The number that reoccurs that business owners do not report as income is $100,000 on average. So now you got a business that makes $200,000 a year profit legitimately. 100 of it never makes it to the tax return because they just don't report it. And then the other 100 is eaten up because of employee theft, waste that the owner doesn't know about. And so there's intentional cooking of the books, and then there's unintentional cooking of the books, but both of them have an impact on the bottom line. The unintentional is sloppy accounting. And I mean, it's just sloppy. And for example, I a client in Long Island wanted to buy a liquor store, and he's in the store saying he's doing due diligence. I never taught him to do this. You don't do that. He's watching every sale be rung through the cash register. You don't learn much that way, but he did learn something. In came the wife of the seller, and she took a $100 bill out of the cash register and left. Did it right in front of my guy and an employee. And the employee went, "You can do that?" So she didn't leave a marker, a check, a note of any kind, didn't say, "Hey, tell my husband I took $100. What we're pretty sure of, though, is we don't know how long she does this or how often, but we're pretty sure that her husband doesn't know about it. So now you got the wife taking money, husband doesn't know about. You have the employee who goes, nobody's checking on anything. So I could take a 20 or 100. Nobody will notice. They don't know if it's me or the wife. Or his friends are not paying for anything. It's not, take that bottle of Hennessy. That's on me. I got an employee discount. You know, he's throwing cases of champagne out the back door for his parties, and nobody's accounting for any of this. So you have the truth, and then you have the seller's version of the truth, and those won't even match because he doesn't know how much he's taken. The sellers that do that, and they all do it, don't keep a record of how much cash they're taking because that would be a diary of a crook. Nobody keeps those kind of self-incriminating records. And then you got the employees and family members also adding to the problem. And then the guy hands it over to his tax accountant who writes off everything he can to try and show little profit. And now you've got something that's really making $200,000 that shows 20. There's no loan.
Yeah.
There's just no loan.
And is that the reason that the Small Business Association, the SBA, is that the reason that they only finance about 3 to 7% of these acquisitions? Because when I heard that number, I mean, it boggled my mind because it's like, okay, 100% of businesses, list, and then 10% of them actually sell. And out that 10%, only 7% of that 10% are actually financed by the SBA. Is that part of the reason, or are there other reasons?
I've never put it that way or heard it put that way. That's excellent. Well, number one, SBA doesn't lend money. All the SBA does is guarantee the money that an independent company would lend. So, if somebody wanted to get a loan, they'd have to go to Wells Fargo or Chase or some lender, bank or non-bank. We have a nonprofit organization that's really aggressive in doing SBA loans. They're much easier to work with because they're not a bank, a blatant profiteer. They're in business for a different reason. But an independent company, bank or non-bank, would decide to make a loan. They're all going to run it through the SBA funnel, no matter whether it's Chase or Bank of America, whoever. So I laugh when people say, oh, my banker likes it a lot. It doesn't matter whether your banker likes it not at all or a lot, and he's your good friend. It's all got to meet the SBA criteria, go through the funnel, and if it doesn't meet their criteria, there's no loan. And the problem is the criteria is not something that even the buyer would like or the seller would agree to. And here's what I mean by that. First of all, half of a loan has to be secured with assets. Now, they don't consider inventory as assets. Those are a problem, right? They're an albatross. There's something that a bank would have to liquidate. Anyway, let me digress for just a second. The SBA guarantees a portion of, like an insurance company, default on the loan. That was done to encourage banks to actually lend money, because even if it's a bad loan, well, they're still going to be taken care of.
Yeah. If
they've crossed all their T's, dotted all their I's according to SBA. And trust me, the SBA is looking for, auditors are looking for every reason to deny a claim. At any rate, so the SBA criteria would be half of the loan has to be secured with assets. And what they mean by assets are cash. Well, if you had the cash, you would need a loan. Or real estate. Well, if you're looking at a $400,000 business, you got to have $200,000 worth of real estate. Most businesses do not own their own real estate. You walk down Main Street American, you pass the hair salon, sports bar, muffler shop. Nobody owns that real estate. They lease.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that means you have to have somebody that's got 50% of the loan or $200,000 in equity in some commercial property or personal property somewhere. Well, that's going to kill most people. They just don't have the equity. But let's just say that they did. So now they're subsidizing personally a deal that can't stand on its own. The business doesn't have any real estate, so nobody can buy it unless they come with personal equity in some other property they're willing to pledge.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't want to do that. Next, you mentioned experience earlier. Yeah, you have to have experience. It's so critical. I couldn't get a deal done one time on a self-service car wash. We had real estate. We had good cash flow on the tax returns, unusual. And the SBA would not approve the deal because my buyer had never owned that type of business before. I said, it's a self-service car wash. He does nothing. People wash their own cars and they give him money. I said, all he has to do is go collect quarters. And I think we could train a blind one-legged monkey to go do that. And my guy's a college-educated currency trader. He trades world currencies. He understands quarters. So won't do the deal.
Wow.
So then you have to have experience. That kills a lot of people. You have to have a 720 or better credit score. That kills a lot of people. And then the real killer, I think, at the end is the SBA requires every deal I've seen come out of underwriting for 15 or more years has said the seller holding a 10% seller finance note. It used to be where after a few years, like 3 years of paying the note on time, that interest-only payments could start to be made to the seller. That after 5 years, principal and interest payments could start to be made on that seller finance note. And that wasn't even ideal. But today it's worse. It's the sellers are on full standby. No payments can come to the seller from the buyer on that 10% until the original loan is paid off.
Wow.
I lost a deal like that not too long ago. It's a $4 million deal. Most of it was real estate. And so it was amortized over 27 years. The seller said, we're going to have to hold a $400,000 note and not get a payment on it for 27 years. We'll be dead before we see anything. So, of course, they're not going to do it. So while the SBA is great, could help a lot of entrepreneurs, it is such a rare occasion where all the planets and stars align, like your situation where you got 50% down, and even if you had experience, you still can't buy the business because there's not enough money on the tax return of the business. The business owner shot himself in the foot and his ability to sell his business. They don't realize, again, the opposites. In real estate, the business or the home is probably priced fairly. In real estate. In business, I don't know where they came up with the number. And then in real estate, the buyer has to qualify for the loan. In business, the business has to qualify. There's not a couple like you guys. You're different. But there's not a couple on the planet that had a conversation and said, honey, let's stop writing off the Lexus and the country club dues and the family cell phone plan, and we'll report all the income, and we're going to pay the most tax we've ever paid in our business, and we're going to do that for the next 3 years. And then we have a shot at selling our business because it's qualified for it'll support a loan. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So it's just an alignment thing. It's what people do.
For sure.
Don't prepare the business for a loan. They don't realize they have a dog in that hunt.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about like experience a little bit. So do you think a person needs experience like in a certain industry to be successful in it? Because you already mentioned like the guy for the self car wash, he didn't really need experience, but what about other industries?
Well, I think it's smart to have, I think you don't need it, but it's smart to do that. I think every time somebody asks me a question like that, I think of Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes went and worked as a baggage handler, the lowest job at the airport, to learn the aviation industry. His general manager of his tool and die company couldn't find him, and he found him at an airport loading bags on an airplane. He's a millionaire. It wasn't, beneath him to go do that. He did it to learn. Yeah. I think you should apprentice a little bit. You should learn your craft. You should study your business. You should know your business. If it's your chosen profession, you should do everything you can to learn it at the top of your game, to be the smartest guy in the room. Yeah. And it's also smart for your financial survival. Mm-hmm. Is it necessary? No. It is for an SBA loan, but the reality is the majority of people that want to buy businesses are wanting to buy something that they've never done before. Yeah. And I never realized that. And I quoted that all the time. And one of my clients said, that's because a seller said, that's because if anybody ever owned one of these things, they'd never want to own another one. So I get that. People are tired of doing the same thing. They want to do something different. Yeah. So the people are going to do this without experience. You can, but you need to have some hand-holding and a mentor, as Blake Shelton would say, to help you. It's why I do what I do. I could get people money on almost any project, and if I quit right there, they'd be thrilled to death. But I wouldn't sleep at night because I know it's coming. Without the experience and a plan for how they're going to run that company, they're looking at bankruptcy. And, I never forget the pain I went through in mine, in losing, my family and all my possessions and credibility and, self-worth and all the stuff you beat yourself up over.
Yeah, for sure. So we've talked a lot about, different financing components, why businesses fail to sell, why the SBA is so strict sometimes, and all of these different components. That really brings me to my next question, which I probably should have asked earlier, but I'm asking it now.
Why everybody came to the podcast.
Yeah. Can you explain exactly what a leverage buyout is? Because I bought, this coffee shop that I own with mostly seller financing and a little bit of investor cash. And I thought I was just like a guru, basically. And I met you and I'm like, I don't know anything.
Well, two of over 106.
Yeah, I know a couple ways. So can you actually explain what a leverage buyout is and why that's so important for individuals who want to get into business?
I'll give you a short example and then a longer one that's more complicated. Yeah. But in short, it's the way Wall Street buys businesses, is you leverage the assets of the business to borrow what monies you can out of that to give to the seller. You don't pledge your personal real estate. You don't come up with a down payment of your own money like SBA would. You just don't. To me, those are subsidies, and a subsidy is a shoring up of something that can't stand on its own.
Yeah.
For me, the business has to stand on its own. If it doesn't, it doesn't mean automatically that I have to fall on the sword and, ravage all of my personal net worth to help that deal work.
Yeah.
So we look at a deal where a client of mine wanted to buy a $2.5 million furniture store.
Yeah.
He had great experience, which is a good thing. I just need a finger hold, and that was a good one, experience, because he knew what he was doing. He's going eyes wide open. We looked at the cash flow. They were rolling that inventory over several times a year. I think had 5-6 times. So there's a lot of cash. I could have borrowed against the cash to cash the seller out and give my buyer all the money he needed. But that money is very expensive because it's not backed by anything except future sales, which are questionable based on a new owner. So we looked a little deeper. We looked at the hard assets, and there was $2 million worth of furniture at cost. So I was able to get my client a $1.7 million line of credit based on that $2 million worth of inventory. So now that's leveraging the assets, right? Mm-hmm. So now we set about doing the deal structure. Need a deal maker if you're going to do a deal, somebody that thinks like this. So I said to my client, let's take 200,000 of that 1.7, keep it for working capital. And we'll take the 1.5 million, offer that to the seller as a down payment on the $2.5 million asking price. We're not going to negotiate price. We'd already done a business valuation. We knew it was worth much more than 2.5. So we're already getting a deal. So 1.5 down, full asking price, and ask him to finance the $1 million balance over just 18 months. Not 27 years like SBA, but just 18 months. Why 18 months? Well, because we did some forensic accounting up front and knew the business could stand that payments of that amount and totally cashed the guy out. So we leveraged the furniture to get some cash to give to the seller. If we could have got $2.5 million, we would have given him $2.5 million. But that's all his business said that we could get. So he can't argue with his own numbers. He can want more. I want a 32-inch waist, but that's not happening this week either. So just because you want it doesn't mean it's possible. Yeah. So we always use reality, not emotion, when we're trying to negotiate a deal. So that's a leverage buyout. It was a cool one, by the way, because nobody had to pull my guy's credit.
Not even for the line of credit?
Had nothing to do with him.
Wow.
The 1.7 was based on the value of the inventory only. Wow. Okay. Here's a little more complicated leverage buyout. So I had a guy that wanted to buy a $3 million electrical contracting company. And for your listeners, your viewers, I'm quoting a $2.5 and a $3 million. These are unusual. They're not. This is not standard operating procedure. I can tell you where the deals are, and the deals are in the ones that you bought, the coffee shop, or tried to buy the hair salon. It's in the walk down Main Street, in the dry cleaner, and it's in those businesses because they can be bought between $100,000 and $400,000 on average. And I can tell you, unless you're extremely lucky and sophisticated and knowledgeable, you're not going to do $1 million deal. I have people that say, oh, I got to do this $1 million deal. To get the kind of money I need to live, I need $1 million deal. You do not. You do not. I just bought a restaurant in Spartanburg, South Carolina. The deal structure was $149,000 asking price. The business is worth $600,000. That's typical to see that sellers are that far off. Remember, only 1 out of 10 sell, so that they've had nobody come look at their business, and their thoughts of retirement are just dashed. They've almost given up hope. So they've reduced the price. Reducing the price in business doesn't change what you need changed. Reducing the price in real estate changes the loan to value ratio. It makes a loan work.
Yeah.
See, everybody tries the real estate thing in business. Well, if there's no loan on it for 200, there's no loan for 149.
Yeah.
There's no loan for 100 because there's only 10,000 or 20,000 showing on the tax return.
Yeah.
It doesn't change the thing we need change. Lowering the price doesn't change the cash flow. At any rate, this deal we just bought, $149 asking price. We offered $75,000 down, and owner financed the balance of $74,000 over 3 years. They took it. So we've leveraged, and we didn't use anything more than we used a couple more. We used some unsecured lines of credit to come up with the $75,000. So we're all in, none of our own cash. That business is cash flowing $80,000 a year, and when I fix it, it will cash flow $180,000 a year, and I'm fixing it the first week. So now that business is going to be worth 3 years later. We would have pulled almost $600,000 cash out of it in 3 years. And we're going to sell it for just under $1 million. You do not, and it provides a salary for my manager of $50,000 a year. You do not need $1 million businesses to become a millionaire. You can buy ones. I've done 3 deals in my life where nothing more than $1 changed hands. Sometimes people are so deep into it, they're over their head. They'd be better to give the keys to somebody and walk away than and be released from the daily grind of having to go in there where nobody's getting a check with the employees and the landlord. At any rate, so back to my leverage buyout, $3 million, not typical. Electrical contracting company, low voltage, high voltage. So they're doing stuff for power companies, oil companies, that kind of thing. So unlike real estate, which is cold and impersonal and insulting, you're working on the price. In business, you can't. It is the opposite of real estate. People are highly vested in their business. It's been something they started. Their kids have worked there. They've been there for 20 years. If you go in and insult them, you're out of there. They will not sell to you. If they don't like you, trust you, and believe you're the perfect person to buy their business, not happening. Mm-hmm. So it's opposite in every way. So we got deep into this guy's life and found out why he was selling the business. In real estate, don't care. Business, it's 60% of the deal. The guy had diabetes, was having a hard time getting through a day's worth of work. His wife had Alzheimer's. The caregiver was calling and interrupting our meetings 2-3 times an hour. The guy really needed to be home taking care of his wife and himself. So he goes to his own banker, and his own banker says, "Joe, I'm sorry, there's no loan on this for anybody." And the seller says, "What?" He says, "Yeah." He said, "It's not how much you make, it's how much you keep. And you don't show in your tax returns that you keep very much." And the guy is arguing, "But we run millions of dollars through your bank every year. You know that." "Yeah, but you don't keep very much of it." Mm-hmm. So there's no loan for anybody. Okay. Armed with that knowledge and a little bit more, I said, "Here's our offer. Always work on a win-win. Real estate's win-lose. You offer less, they decide to take less or not. Yeah. Business has to be win-win, which is really great for awesome people like you. You're nice people. You don't have to go in and take advantage of somebody to get a deal. Yeah. You don't have to do uncomfortable negotiations and be a jerk and that would fight your personality and you wouldn't sleep well at night. Yeah. You have to be the opposite. You have to be yourself, be nice people. That's what wins them over. And once you get that, you got 60% of your deal done. Rest of it's working out the details. Yeah. Here are the details. So I said, "We'll give you $1 million down." The guy said, "No, I need the $3 million. Now understand, you think you need the $3 million because after taxes, he thought he was going to wind up with about half of it. And he was afraid that because of their medical conditions, that he'd outlive the money. I said, "Don't worry about it. We understand your situation. Listen to the deal. $1 million down, $2 million owner financed." And I can tell you, $1 million businesses stay on the market for many, many, many years. So for this to be done in 30 days, God sent a gift.
Yeah, for sure.
I said, full asking price, $3 million. You'll finance the $2 million over 36 months. That's it. And you're out. No SBA, 10%, 20 years or more. Yeah. Said, but that's not all. We want to have a meeting, and we're going to pay you the $1 million down and $20,000 a month for 36 months, and then cash you out of a balloon payment of anything that's left after 3 years. So you're out no matter what in 3 years, full asking price plus interest. So you're actually going to get more, and you're going to pay less tax because it's spread out over 3 or 4 years. So then we said, we really don't want to screw this up. So we want to have a meeting with you, 30 minutes, once a month, every month. Want to have your counsel. We'll pay you $400 for your time. That seems kind of foolish. If we're going to give a guy $1 million and $20,000 a month, we really need to give him $400 more. Yes, because it's the way we're going to give it to him. We're going to give it to him in a W-2. So he's now still an employee. which means we can continue to pay for his health insurance and his life insurance. Now, this was back before Obamacare. I promise you, $3 million with $1 million down, $20,000 a month, full asking price, with health insurance and life insurance, spends a whole lot better than $3 million cash after taxes with no insurance for people that were uninsurable.
For sure.
Okay. Then we said, you got a company truck. There's 31 company trucks. Why don't you keep that one? He's not driving anywhere. It doesn't cost us anything more. It's built in the operating expenses. Now he doesn't have to pay for a vehicle. Next, we said, but nobody's talking about the elephant in the room, and that's your son. And your son is the highest paid guy in the building after dad leaves. Anybody that buys his business will fire him, except us. So what we'll do, at that point, it's like you guys could never have Thanksgiving dinner ever together again. Dad, you stole my job right out from underneath me. Well, son, I had to. We went to the bank. You couldn't get the money. I figure that's the only reason the seller goes to the bank, right? And the guy says, I had to take care of your mom and myself. So we did what nobody else would do, and we solved his problems. He didn't even know he could ask for the help. So that ties to your abundance lifestyle here and why you help others, because it helps you. So we said, what we'll do is we'll give your son an employment contract. You can leave here knowing your son's taken care of. He's got a job, but we're going to step it up and we're going to do the right thing. And the right thing is we're going to put your son on a bonus program. If he controls the labor cost and the material cost, the two things that help us make money or not, within the tolerances we give him, then he can bonus. And he can bonus every quarter for the next 3 years. And he can bonus up to $500,000. Why $500,000? Because that money can be used for one thing and one thing only. And that is the 10% down payment on an SBA loan to buy the business back and bring it home to the family that started it and where it belongs. So we engineer our buy-in at $3 million, and 3 years later, our buyout at $5 million. We don't have to find a buyer. We've got one ready-made. We don't have to pay a broker 10% or 12%. Even if the guy never bonuses, we just gave him the bonus money. We're still ahead, and we have a sure sale. We'll prepare the financials so that they reflect enough money to justify a $5 million loan. And he has the experience. So now all the problems that are inherent in an SBA loan are not problems 3 years from now. The guy has experience. He has down payment money. He's been running the business and the family business forever.
Absolutely.
So the question is now the leverage buyout. Where do you get $1 million down? So several places, always. There's several places. So we looked at the hard assets first. There were 31 company trucks. We're talking big bucket trucks, heavy duty that you buy for $80,000 to $100,000 each. Easily could have done an equipment sale leaseback where the money from the sale of the equipment goes to the seller, and my guy enters into a lease to own that equipment with a lease company. Easily could have done that. But a quicker, cleaner, neater, easier way was to look at the cash flow. And these customers of theirs, power companies, oil companies, they'd done work for them, invoiced them, and hadn't been paid yet. So we had money that was owed the company, receivables, to the tune of about $1.4 million. So we sell those to a factor who will gave us about $1.1 million on those advance. We get the rest of it when they pay, but in advance, $1.1 million on the $1.4 the company was due. Yeah. So my guy walks through the door of the business, full benefits package, $100,000 working capital in the bank. Again, nobody had to pull his credit because we're using the credit worthiness of who is going to pay those invoices. Big oil companies, big power companies.
Yeah.
Their balance sheets are strong. Their credit's strong. Make sense?
Definitely.
I know that's a longer story, but it helps. I hope it helps to get your head out of traditional banking and into how you can use other financing methods. Absolutely. And you puzzle piece them. As long as they don't conflict with each other, you can have 2, 3, 4, 5. I would say in an average deal, we have 4 to 6 that we stack.
4 to 6 financing methods?
Yes.
Wow.
That is amazing.
That is.
And the crazy thing is it's like I've had harder trouble getting into some real estate deals and harder trouble getting into like even some business deals on my own than like what it is that you're saying right now. And it's like, you know, it's just amazing to me that these opportunities are here for everybody, and
it's unbelievable Wild West.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't understand because nobody's doing it because they don't understand how to do this.
Yeah.
And I do this because I have a passion for it, just like you guys do what you do because you have a passion for it. You know, my first purpose when I started this business was to help people get into business and do so with little to none of their own money. And we do that. We only charge $7,000 to $10,000 for a project. Well, if somebody's trying to go on their own, they got to pay $30,000 to $40,000 to attorneys for buyout agreements, for incorporation fees, and on and on. And they got to have 10 to 20% to put down. That's like $100,000 to try and buy a $300,000 business.
Yes.
That doesn't work. My second purpose, though, which speaks to the industry as well, it came out of an abundance of an awareness of this issue that you touched on earlier about people not selling their businesses. Yeah. When somebody runs their business, they don't put money away for retirement usually. It's a rare occasion where they do. They think they're going to sell their business and retire. An average sale in America is $300,000. So if a person thinks they're going to sell the business and retire on $300,000 plus maybe some savings and the equity in their home and the reverse mortgage or whatever, that's a pretty respectable lifestyle, I think, for the rest of your life. It's enough. It's enough money to be okay with Social Security. You know that you can't count on. But when they find out that there's a 90% chance that they're not going to sell their business, 90% of those people wind up retiring in abject poverty. Poverty in America after they've worked and been an entrepreneur and employed people and put bread on the table of their employees for years. And then instead of retiring and handing down some wealth to their kids, they're a burden on those kids. Mm-hmm. That's an epidemic in America that just breaks my heart. Mm-hmm. And it's fixable. It's fixable. We just need to educate people that you can sell your business and how you do that. In fact, the process that we've perfected has a 90% success rate because we hold people's hands through the process, but we also make sure the money's there, and you need money to do a deal. Mm-hmm. So the thing you didn't talk about earlier, is you touched on it, was I don't want to let go, is brokers, unlike in the opposites. Brokers in real estate, when you contact one, they're your person. Mm-hmm. When you contact a person in business, they're the enemy. Yeah. You cannot confide in them the same way.
And they probably don't like you.
Tell them stuff. They'll use it against you. They represent the seller and the seller only.
Yeah.
Further, it is such a shade tree mechanic industry. There are only 13 states that require licensing or training to be a broker. In 33 states, all you have to do is step outside and announce to the world, I'm a business broker. That's it. There's no licensing, no training, no schooling, no apprenticeship, no.
What is it in Illinois?
There is. It falls under real estate law in Illinois. You have to get a license. Yeah. Okay. But just like in Florida where I live, you have to get a real estate license to be a business broker, and they don't teach anything about brokering businesses. What they teach you is real estate, and then you use the real estate process to sell businesses, and it's the wrong process.
Yeah.
No wonder nothing ever gets done.
Yeah. That's crazy.
It's not relevant. It's Wild West. Nobody's buying businesses. You can truly buy any number of businesses with little to none of your own money, fully financed, and you don't have to buy big ones. The story I tell all the time that is pretty the vanilla of deals is we had a guy by the name of Jose who wanted to buy a restaurant. He was a banker, just wanted to do something different, and just loved being in the restaurant business, or thought he would. So he finds one in Jacksonville, Florida for $110,000. Most people would walk on by that thinking, how am I ever going to make any money out of that? It's barely a hobby. But when we did a business valuation, that's the first thing we do. We do forensic accounting to get to the truth of the cash flow, and then we do a business valuation. And the reason we do that, again, the opposites. In real estate, when a home is sold, all that information goes to courthouse. And so there are comparable properties or comps to compare property to property. So you're pretty sure the property is priced fairly, because to do anything less than the comps or more than the comps would be foolish. Yeah. In business, when a business is sold, that transaction is recorded nowhere. At the courthouse, it's a private transaction. So we don't know whether the business is priced as dog of the year or deal of the year. You have no idea, because the only way to know is to pay for an appraisal like you would in a home. Yeah. But unlike real estate, business appraisals or valuations are $5,000 minimum. Oh, nobody ever paid $5,000 to have some guy tell him how much he ought to ask for his business. So I know how much I put into it, and I know how much we need out of it. And I always wanted to buy a Winnebago and travel the country for a year, $300,000. Well, it might be worth $150,000. It might be worth $350,000. You don't know. So we did this valuation on Jose's restaurant. $110,000 is the asking. We find out it's worth $270,000. Jose bought that, put $160,000 to his personal net worth with the stroke of a pen. It's not often in real estate you can do that. But what I know you can't do very, very often is in real estate is increase the cash flow of that business, which we did. We took it from about $80,000 to $180,000 in cash flow and made it worth over $700,000 in 12 months. So you can't flip that business like you can real estate. You have to hold it for about 2.5 years so that you have the financials so your buyer can get a loan to cash you out and you don't have to owner finance. Right. But buy it for $110,000, worth $270,000, tweak a couple of little things and make it worth $700,000. How many times you have to do that? And those are easy sales because those people are starved for buyers.
Yeah.
Starved.
Wow.
This episode is awesome. And I'm sure our listeners, they learned so much from the stories you told and all about the business side. So if you could choose the number one takeaway for someone to walk away from this episode with, what would it be?
I think I just wrapped with it, and that is that don't be fooled into investing in real estate. It is so overdone. All of the hedge funds came through my neighborhood and ravaged all of the foreclosures. Yeah. You can't compete with those guys. And yet we still have these people selling snake oil, flip this, flip that, flip Tucson, flip, and they're charging a bunch of money for that snake oil. And it's just not a way to build wealth. This is an honest to goodness way to build wealth with no competitors. I did the real estate thing. My first property I bought on the courthouse steps, I was the only bidder. The only bidder.
That's nice.
Kidding me.
Those days are gone.
Yeah. And I went back, we did it for a couple of years. And a couple of years later, I go, and there's 35 people bidding. It's like, can't buy a property. Just stop thinking that that's the way to go. There are so many sellers out there that need to sell, want to sell. They're so cooperative. And there's over 100 ways to buy a business or finance it using none of your own money. What's to stop you once you understand the process from buying 2 or 3 or 4 or 5? Yep. You could be dangerous with your appetite for businesses. Mm-hmm. I would say the number one takeaway is also, unlike real estate or stock trading or something else like that, That's what somebody else likes and tells you need to do to make a living. Well, that may not make you happy.
Yeah.
But if you want to own a dress shop, well, okay, why not do what you love? I mean, if you're going to change your life, do what you love, because then you generate all the creativity and energy to be wildly successful, and you've created a happy life. Well, life is too short to go doing something that you don't care for, that you have no passion for, and you do it just to make a living.
Absolutely.
Makes sense. And there's one thing that's a phenomenon among my clients that I'll share, because it's another opportunity. And we're talking about building wealth and abundance, is a significant portion of my clients over the years, when they get a taste of what brokers are all about. Brokers in this industry do not return calls. They are tough to deal with. I got to forewarn your listeners.
I have horror stories.
And I couldn't understand why. I'm going, why? Why do you not return calls? You have somebody that's interested in buying one of your listings. They make 10 to 12%. It's not like real estate where 6 is on the table and you have to split it up between, buyers and sellers, brokers. They typically don't split with anybody. They're going to make 36 grand on this sale. Why don't you return a call? And the broker on the Jose deal told me, I asked him that question. I said, why do my clients all across the country complain about this? He goes, Ed, the guys in my office want to do 2 deals a year and go play golf. That's it. They don't want to work any harder. Well, my clients over the years have all said to me, my God, I could be a better business broker than them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I founded a separate company called, shameless plug here, Profit Architects.
Absolutely. Which I will use good enough, just so everybody knows.
And so I train people to be business brokers, but I also train them to be money brokers and to be business consultants. Because when you're doing a business listing, you have to get into the financials of the business. Well, if you knew what you could do with that information, you could make consulting money. Or if somebody hired you to be a business consultant and you can improve their profitability by 20 or 30%, well, then you're the natural choice for them to list their business with when they're going to sell it. And they probably need to borrow some money, so you could broker that. It's a 6-figure job. So we do have training that's coming up. And I'm asking you we talked about maybe putting it on your website. Mm-hmm. But for any of your listeners, if they're interested in making a 6-figure income, we do 4 days of training in Tampa. Some of the early mover bonuses are pretty generous. Mm-hmm. And that is the first day of training, we give them a $900 travel reimbursement check. So your airfare, your hotel's covered. You get to bring a guest for free. You get to have dinner with me and some staff at one of my favorite restaurants. It's a steakhouse. And there's other bells and whistles that we throw in. And for people signing up where they mention your name, would you just your last name, Mims, on the registration form, they're going to get some additional benefits that we're not even going to tell them about because they're so awesome.
That's great.
But yeah, it's a second opportunity. It's an opportunity because you also learn how to buy businesses with none of your own money during that training of how to help others. Over 34% of my last class bought businesses with none of their own money before they used any of their consulting tools and resources to actually go help others and make money for themselves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's plenty of money out there. You just got to go get your fair share.
Absolutely.
And you got to do it in a win-win.
We believe that for sure.
Thanks for what you do, guys. Super impressed with the two of you and your mission. So,
Thank you so much. And we always have to, did you want to ask something? Okay. We always have to ask this question before somebody leaves the podcast, and you do so much to really help individuals and communities and business owners and entrepreneurs, all of that. And we really, really appreciate that. The question is, whether it be in your personal life or even in your business, how do you like to spread abundance in your life?
Well, I think my purpose in life exemplifies that. My purpose is to put within the grasp of an average person the ability to own their own business. Yeah. Again, if you had to have $100,000 worth of down payment money and professional fees to buy a $300,000 business, most of America can't do that.
Yeah.
You know, if Jasmine ever saved up $100,000, you probably wouldn't let her put it in something. Right? I mean, it would just be, it's like, no.
We would have to look at it pretty closely.
Even if you get that, even if you get that far, you just don't do it. So for us to take all of that and use leverage buyout strategies that eliminate the down payment, to then do all of the hard cost of forming a corporation and eliminating that fee, doing the buyout agreement. Hell, attorneys charge $6,000 to $10,000 to do a buyout agreement. That's what we charge for our whole project. We eliminate those costs. We do a project for $7,000 to $10,000, and as long as the person has some okay credit, there's a high probability of them being able to borrow that money through a finance company that we have in place. So it truly is 100% finance. If you just have the desire, you could walk through the door of a business with none of your own money and change your life. And I've seen it change somebody's life in the blink of an eye. Go from poverty to being able to feed their family. Yeah. That's pretty rewarding, and that's how I spread abundance, is putting this ownership of a business within the reach of people.
Absolutely.
To then use my Profit Architects company at profitarchitects.com, people can find more information, to train people the Ed Keels way to buy businesses. We changed 10% of business owners selling their businesses to 90%. Now we've made this huge dent in how business owners retire in America and how they hand down wealth, not become a burden on their children and family.
Absolutely.
When I think about that and the abundance that spreads, it's a purpose-filled life. Absolutely. And I'm thankful for it.
Yeah. So if somebody wants
to asking the question,
no problem. So if somebody wants to get into contact with you, they go to like what website, what social media?
They can go to one of two, profitarchitects.com, 16-minute video there where they can watch a little bit, learn more about the training and see if it's for them. I've met a lot of people in my life. Clearly, half of the people I've met fancy themselves as some kind of consultants. I would think you guys are. And ask for guidance and help. And I found that most people struggle with how to be a consultant. How do I get clients? What do I deliver? What do I charge that's fair? And that's what Profit Architect training does. And since you're a triple threat, you're doing 3 different things: consulting, business brokering, and money brokering. 6 figures is, I won't say easy because Federal Trade Commission doesn't like that, but it's attainable.
Very attainable.
Each one of those, it's attainable. If you put them together, wow. But yeah, profitarchitects.com. I would say ifthebanksaysno.com that you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast has the free training videos. You click the Get Funded Now button, or you click the No, I get all the money I need button. I just want the free training. Then you can watch 12 videos on the business buying process.
Absolutely.
Either one of those sites would be great. Or they could just pick up the phone and call me.
For sure.
Or they call you.
Definitely. That too. So
so like I said, this episode was awesome. You are a wealth of knowledge, and everyone, we will be doing a part 2 because we didn't even cover everything we wanted to talk about today even. So be on the lookout for the part 2 of this episode. But thank you, Ed, so much for all that you gave to our listeners.
No problem. I'm excited to talk about part 2 because we're going to talk about the different business entities, sole proprietors, partnerships, LLCs, S Corps, C Corps. What is all of that, and how can you use it to your advantage?
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We'll see you next week.
See ya. So that's all we have for today, folks. I hope you got as much value out of this as we did. Keep in mind, the only way we can improve is through constructive feedback. So remember to rate and review this episode. Also, you are not the only person that needs to know this super valuable information. So be sure to subscribe and share as well. Stay tuned for the next episode. And remember to always spread abundance. Peace.